Fenrir, the giant wolf, could not be constrained by any means known to man, so the dwarves forged a chain, but not from metal. Nothing made by man could constrain Fenrir, the mighty wolf, so they forged it from the things we cannot see and the things we cannot hear, like the breath of a fish, the sound a moving cat makes, or the roots of a mountain. Floki, all change. Hello and welcome one and all to episode 7 of ExiledGottomas. I am Gottomas, your forever DM, once again bringing you content about all things Path of Exile 2 related. Today's episode will be a first of its kind for my channel. Today, instead of looking at the next new build that I am going to make, or am making, which is usually the case, I will be revisiting my first build of this league, my Oracle Wolf. For those of you itching for another new build, fret not. I have another new one planned out that I'll be starting up soon. Today though, we will be starting on a new series of completing characters instead of starting only new ones. I cannot wait to start my newest build, but honestly at the same time I think that I need to complete the current builds that I have done for the season so that all of you guys who have watched my channel so far can see more of what the build will turn into once you get later on into the game. I decided that I should do this for anyone who's planning on making an attempt at building something similarly to me, as a way to show my viewers the viability of what I am discussing in my previous content. So for today's episode, I will be doing something I feel is a necessary step to showcasing how the builds that I have created so far fare into the endgame. After all, in a previous video I discussed how some builds are strong earlier in the game and some builds only become strong later in the game. So to show y'all how all of my builds can function no matter when those builds come online, I decided that I should post a conclusion video for each character that I have made before starting another new one. Since we're halfway or maybe even a bit more than halfway through with the season. Now what, you may ask, do I consider to be a completed character? And that is a great question. Because every player of this game has to decide at what point they will call their character complete. You see, since this game is a game that each player must create their own win conditions for, then as a theory crafter and a content creator, it is truthfully my duty to assign a time frame or a win condition where I can consider my characters complete so that I can pass them along to you in their finalized form. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to define what a character being complete means to me. One majorly important thing that you should realize about this is that I am setting my own win conditions and that they may vary greatly from what your own personal win conditions are. This does not mean that either is right or wrong, but instead means that these are the conditions that I have designated as the reasons for calling them as a completed character. So, what are the win conditions that I've set for myself? Pretty simple, to be honest. I want the character to become level 90 or better. I want them to defeat the Arbiter of Ash. I want them to have a way to consistently farm currency so that my other characters can benefit from each and every one of their actions. And lastly, I want them to be able to at least clear T15 maps that are fully juiced in a consistent manner with a growth plan set out in case someone wanted to further progress. I figure if I can do all of these for each character that I have made, then I would consider those characters successes, and as such, complete. So, over the course of today's episode, I hope to share with you how I did what I did, so that you can feel as much more comfortable either doing something similarly yourself, or simply to help share what I know of theory crafting in my process with you, so that you can take that information and design something of your own that's entirely unique and has never been seen before. So, as always, sit back and relax, smoke your little smoke, and drink you a little drink while I tell you the tale of how the lone wolf became legend and the arbiter of Ash fell. Alright guys, so to get started with stuff today, we are going to do a different format obviously, since I'm going to be telling you about our build. So what I'd like to do to start with is discuss the skill selection. Okay? So, right off the bat, we'll get back to Malice in a little bit, but right off the bat, we have Moment of Vulnerability. Now, Moment of Vulnerability, I wanted to use this simply because it duplicates a boss. If you have trouble in your bossing, if you have issues with doing enough damage to it, then if you can lock it down and you can use this move, it duplicates it. So, for instance, with my Oracle Wolf, we use the freeze or stun option as the way to actually activate it, and once it's activated, usually immediately afterwards they will be freezed or stunned, and then I will have two completely locked and frozen bosses for a matter of a few seconds. And so if I'm having trouble killing a boss in the amount of time that I have before things get really dangerous, Moment of Vulnerability really gives me an option to literally double my damage. So that's actually the primary reason I went with Oracle outside of the passive skills. I picked Astral Projection because it's very, very helpful. I don't need it to necessarily target around me. I need it to target what I want it to. So Astral Projection literally is the perfect solution to get it to target where I aim and not where I am. Inexorable Critical. Some of these things, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if they actually work or not. But this does seem to actually have an impact. Simply because as the duplicates are there, I'm probably going to land using Inexorable Critical at least one crit before it's over, sometimes even two, depending, and it makes a big difference in the amount of damage when you're doubling things. Wolves are honestly ice-based, so Brittle Armor is makes perfect sense. It's pretty self-explanatory. Same thing with Cold Exposure here. This shouldn't be any surprise. And the last one is Empty because I just hit level 91 when I unlocked it. Same thing here with Shred, which we're about to get into now. Now, something you should know about Shred actually is that Shred is the primary form of damage in this build. I use it basically exclusively outside of Pounce and Cross Slash and like Lunar Assault. But my everyday bread and butter, so to speak, my damage output is coming entirely from Shred. So Close Combat 2, very self-explanatory. Rage 3, also very self-explanatory. Brutality 3, even very self-explanatory. I don't need my basic attack to actually be doing any sort of elemental damage. That comes from Lunar Blessing. I need Brutality to be there to bypass their physical damage reduction, which is a huge thing. Crescendo 3. Now, if you've never tried Crescendo on a basic attack, it actually makes a big difference. Crescendo 3, for instance, does these overhand slashes with the werewolf with double claws. They do a lot more damage, and they actually seems to, it like repeats itself. So you go, those big swipes are thanks to Crescendo 3. And they do just an absolute shit ton more damage than normal. Lunar Assault. Now, this is, in the beginning, I used this quite a bit. It mattered quite a bit. I needed it to be able to freeze the enemy as fast as possible. But I'll be honest with you, despite the fact that it is fully geared out and statted out with support gems and stuff, I really don't use it, to be honest with you. Not anymore. About the only time I use it now is if I'm trying to build up my mana usage for Feral Invocation and I need to do it quickly. It's a very fast mana expenditure, He does a really good job keeping my damage output up while still burning mana, for lack of a better way to put it. It's literally a doorway to step into Feral Invocation for me at this point in time. And yet again with more stuff: freeze, deep freeze, biting frost, magnified area, close combat. None of this is anything odd or out of the ordinary. It all makes sense. It's very, very simple tech. Feral Invocation. Now this one I know a lot of people have a problem with, and I have to admit I tried it on both the wolf and on the bear. And on the bear it sucked. And I mean, it sucked bad. But on the wolf, when you sink in cross slash with it, it actually does really amazingly. I think currently I'm able to do about 20 to 22 attacks with a cross slash attack when I'm fully built up on Feral Invocation. So it is my 100% my bossing damage. The whole point when fighting a boss is lock them down with freeze, and then immediately, as soon as they are frozen, activate Feral Invocation and just rip them apart. It's very simple. I've got to equip a Boundless Energy, very simple. Energy Retention, very simple. Cross Slash, as we said. Energy Capacitor, and finally Life Leech. And I'm unconvinced about Life Leech, but I put it in there to begin with because I realized that when I activate Feral Invocation, it turns me back into a human. And for those couple of seconds that I'm back into a human, I am very vulnerable to damage. So I went ahead and instituted Life Leech into it to see if that could mitigate. And I'll be honest, it seems to help mitigate the issues. So I haven't changed it out, but it is a definite possibility for changing out in the future. Pounce. Now this is a lone wolf build, so this is the actually after I started and I was using wolves as an actual minion and pouncing anytime I could. Now Pounce has become more of a movement skill, and if I get an extra wolf out of it, that's great. If not, it's fine. It's mainly there to get me out of like toxic blossoms, or to get me away from, say, volatile crags or volatile plants, things like that that follow you and then track. Pounce is a great way to get around them. It also is a very, very fluid combo attack if you use Pounce and then cross slash out of Pounce. You'll jump in, then you'll jump back out, and then, believe it or not, oddly enough, Shred has a leaping in ability on its first slash. So if you do Pounce, cross slash, Shred, you literally go jump in, slash, jump out, slash, jump in, barrage of slashes. And so Pounce is a very useful skill, especially, like I said, in the later game when you're trying to avoid things like volatile plants and that kind of thing. Mark for Death, very simple. Deal with the Pounce with the mark. Tear. Now I do really, really like this because sometimes you'll get two wolves out of one Pounce instead of just one, which is a very nice feature. Crater, simple enough. It literally just makes the Pounce more damaging. Holy Descent. Now this I like because when I pounce and I land, it'll create the consecrated ground. Then I'll jump back out, then I'll jump back in. And when I land, the consecrated ground is already there and starting to do its effect. That way, as I come back in with a barrage of slashes, the consecrated ground is helping keep me topped off, keep me safe, that kind of thing. And lastly, Charged Mark. Yeah, it's just a great secondary ability. Shocking makes enemies take extra damage. So if you can pounce and then cross slash and you do the mark activation, it will trigger a little patch of charged ground that it will shock. It actually does do a good job. It's very simple, it's very direct, but that subtlety allows for a nice boost in damage that you would not normally expect to find. Now, this is what makes the Oracle Wolf so dangerous once we get into the passive skills and is the absolute pinnacle of its damage and everything that this build functions around. Lunar Blessing just does such astonishing amounts of frozen damage and freezes things all over the screen and shatters them. It's truly amazing. Especially on something that with our passives for like cooldown duration and for shift, shapeshift skill duration, things like that. Yeah, Lunar Blessing you can keep up nearly 100% of the time, and it like exponentially multiplies out your damage. It's truly insane. Prolonged duration, very self-explanatory. Cooldown recovery, once again. Rage 2, once again. Ice Bite 2, yet again, very simple. And then the last one is Rockiatus Flow. Now, for the longest time, I wasn't using this. I wasn't planning on getting one of these unless I dropped it. But I got lucky, and I found a Hinokora's Lock, and I sold it for an obscene amount of divs. And when I sold it for that obscene amount of divs, I went ahead and invested a small amount of those to Rockiatus Flow to see how it did. And I have to be honest with you that so far it's made the difference between breaking like Juice T12 maps, like just breaking them apart, versus Juice T15 maps and just tearing them apart. Rockiatus Flow definitely seems to have made the biggest difference. Moving on, we are at Tame Beast. Now, Tame Beast is interesting because I told you I always keep Tame Beast on my skill sets as long as I can, because I never know when I'm going to find one, and Legion is always on the lookout for new companions. And in this instance, actually, Tame Beast functions for my Oracle Wolf because I was hunting a werewolf companion. So, and even once I found one, I'm still hunting. It's a never-ending process. It's just a base level Tame Beast gem, and level 9 simply because of my dexterity score. It's that simple. Cross Slash. Now, Cross Slash is again one of our bread and butters. This does amazing amounts of damage, especially when ice crystals are on the ground, and you link it with like Pounce and with Shred, as we've talked about. Once again, I mean, all of this is very, very simple as far as the selections go. The only one that's different is Culmination 2. And the reason why I use Culmination 2 is because of the barrage of melee-based attacks. I mean, it's possible to put out 20, 30, 40 attacks in next to no time whatsoever using Shred. So when you activate Cross Slash after that, and you get your 20 combo on board, it does a significant amount of damage, and it becomes very crucial, especially when fighting an overpowered boss. Last up, we have our current Werewolf Prowler. Now, this is interesting because Werewolf Prowlers in and of themselves are not necessarily very strong. I have a lot of companions that are actually stronger than the Werewolf Prowler. But it's thematic, first off. It's a huge deal. And second off, having Shroud Walker with Elemental Resistance Aura and it keeping itself alive with Regenerates Life is an amazing combo. It bounces all over the screen, it keeps everybody completely full. I'd have to look and see, but I think most of my elemental resistances, when it is activated, are over 100%, uncapped. And it may seem like it is a almost a superlative effect, a non-necessary kind of thing. One thing I've noticed is that in the highest tiers of maps, mainly in tier 15s, you run into a lot of like elemental resistance debuffs, or burning ground, or lightning ground, or whatever. And so especially if you take those curses where you get elemental debuffs, having an extra source of elemental resistance on top of my normal stuff that comes from my kit and my armor is just insanely beneficial. I don't necessarily count on him doing damage. I count on him staying alive and keeping me alive. His stuff is very simple. Once again, rapid attacks, magnified area to get his aura out more, and Ramira's Requital to help keep me alive more, and Ignite 3 because he has the thing that says all damage ignites, and Fire Penetration 2. So while he doesn't do that much damage, what damage he does is actually, it's pretty effective. So that's all that we have on our skill tree. So let's jump over to our inventory, because inventory is every bit as important as skill trees. So to start with, we'll go top to bottom. Let's start with the helmet. Now, the biggest thing about the helmet here is getting the pluses to resistances, but it's that major energy shield and energy shield recharge rate. I even got the desecrated energy shield bonus to it. So we're sitting at quite a substantial amount of energy shield, especially when capped out at quality. And then it took me a few tries buying, like, I think I did 4 different helmets. But once I bought the helmets and I did the corruption and everything, I finally landed on a beautiful, beautiful corruption roll and desecration roll. And it just worked out perfectly. That's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for a double-socketed helmet so that you can get reservation efficiency of minion skills and skill effect cooldowns as a bonus, and skill effect, I think the cooldown ratio was the one that I got. It came with, it was like fractured or something. I'm honestly not sure. But yeah, so there's our helmet, and that's what you're kind of looking for to go with. Amulet. Now this one took me a while to do, and actually I spent about 200 divs getting an Omen of Light since I didn't have one to get that desecrated fixed. This is probably the single most expensive piece of gear I actually have. It was not cheap to get the plus 49 to spirit and the plus 3 to level of all melee skills. It came without any sort of quality on it. It came without any sort of allocation of skill, no desecration, no nothing. And with a decent amount of luck, a really good amount of currency, and some patience, we got a very, very, very functional zero amulet that it does its job. The biggest things there are the cast speed, the spirit, and the melee skills, while also just giving me some bonuses to defense. Now, this one I'm quite proud of. I made this weapon. When I got it, it was just a plus 7 level to all melee skills, and a 24% attack speed increase, and elemental damage. I did the quality, I did the corruption, I did the twice corruption, I did the gems, I did everything on this that I could. Probably the finest crafting item I've ever created in this game, and was one of the biggest reasons I was able to jump up from tier 12 to tier 15s. This simple, that bonus, man, that last little 15 spirit, man, it made such a big difference. When we get to the passive skills, you'll understand why. Well, even when you get to the passive skills, you're about to understand why here in just a sec, because next up is the Scepter. So despite not being a minion build, I actually took the passive node that gives you a talisman and a scepter. And even though I have minion characters, this is the highest spirited scepter that I have due to the passive skill removing half of it. However, its biggest reason of being here on top of the spirit and the malice aura, which is just busted. It really is. Critical weakness is insane, and for free critical weakness, it's even better. But one of the overall biggest things about this, and the reason I decided to keep it, was that 51 area increased presence area of effect. Your Lunar Blessing is a buff AoE area of effect. This makes it where instead of it just targeting little bitty, targets around you in your general vicinity, this will make your Lunar Blessing literally cover the entire screen. It'll kill everything, and sometimes you'll come across screens where it's like, damn, when did that die? Because there's ice shards all over the ground, and you realize it was from a previous casting of Lunar Blessing that you didn't even see kill something. But while I do use Feral Invocation, because of that increased presence of effect, I found it worth taking both the Talisman and Scepter along with the penalties and investing. Actually, this overall wasn't that expensive because it had been corrupted with only a single socket, and it, I mean, it was about 15 div probably, but I did the quality, I corrupted it, I did the increased spirit on it, that kind of thing. Overall, though, to begin with, this really wasn't that bad. In the presence area of effect, I got lucky on that desecration. I did not need to do a Omen of Light on it. So, moving on, let's go to a ring. Now, this ring is actually pretty new. I picked this ring up because I realized that my resistances were so high that I could actually afford to drop like 30% in each resistance aura, or each resistance category, I'm sorry, and increase my overall damage output. And when I saw a 32% increased damage with strength and intelligence, and then base level physical and cold, it was a done deal. I had to pick it up immediately, and as soon as I did, I modified it with quality to include my cold modifiers up, and yeah, it's performed spectacularly. Now we move on to the Pearl Ring. Now this one's interesting. This one I actually have been keeping around mainly because of the rarity of items found. That 19% is nice, but it's really because of that 22% chaos resistance. That is a top tier roll on a base item, and yeah, I mean, you can get better than that, but it's hard to get better than that on a single item for a chaos resistance roll, especially one that's not dedicated to it. So to have increased cast speed is meh. Increased fire attacks is pretty nice. Maximum life is always nice. 19% increased rarity of items is fantastic when you don't have very much rarity. And then cold, chaos, and strength. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing very interesting here, I don't find, outside of that chaos resistance roll bringing up my other resistances. Now, this one cost me a fair amount. The breastplate was pretty expensive. Finding that quality with that level of armor and that level of energy shield was not... It actually wasn't too expensive in the grand scheme of things, but it took me a few days to find one that was not that expensive. And the only thing that I actually did to this item was I did the corruption on it. I thought it was worth it, and it is... as far as I can tell you, honestly, I don't think the corruption on this one actually did anything. I think it was one of those corruptions that literally just applied corrupted to it, and that was the end of it. But this is probably the single biggest item that made the difference between being in T12 versus T15. Because the item I was using at T12s was about 1200 armor and about 300 energy shield. And so to jump up 300 armor and 200 energy shield made a huge difference in my survivability going up into the highest tiers. Next up are gloves. Yeah, frenzy charges, intelligence, that's all well and good. Biggest thing here that you'd be looking for, of course, is the +2 to melee skills. Again, another very high level chaos resistance roll, because it is still hard to find, and a decent cold damage to attack. I went ahead and corrupted this item after I got that cold damage to attack because I didn't want to run the risk of messing anything else up, and that was a, well, small, it was a beneficial roll in the grand scheme of things. And you can see, I mean, there's nothing super impressive about it, but it was still beneficial and it didn't hurt me. And so I went ahead and just left it be. Our boots. Now, our boots we did get lucky on. I found a set of boots that had this 5% increased movement speed just by themselves. They had good armor, decent energy shield, but no quality. And they had good fire, cold, and lightning resistance, which is what I went after. Then I increased quality. I dropped a desecration on it. I had to re-roll the desecration attempt on this one as well to get the 20% increased movement speed to add to the flat 5%. And so we ended up with a very nice set of defensive boots, but very simple in design. This character is not super complex. The tech that goes into it is not crazy. It just is effective. Our belt. Again, here's another big source of chaos resistance, but the biggest thing here about the belt that we were going for was that maximum life and that lightning. Those two things really needed some help when we did this. And the chaos resistance, honestly, and the maximum life, the chaos resistance in life just kind of really pushed it over. We really needed the lightning resistance to be finished out. And the stun threshold was nice with the 2 charm slots. But again, none of this is like a crazy item or anything that needs super big explanations. Next up, we just have a really kick-ass flask. This is not fancy. It's just the best life over 3 seconds that I could find with a decent amount of charges and didn't tap into anything else. Same thing with mana. The mana does remove some life when I use it, but I don't really use mana that much, so it doesn't matter. The biggest thing was if I did need to increase my mana artificially, I wanted to do it by a large quantity, is the way I would put it. Last up, charms. Again, I've only started actually just getting legendary charm drops. So these are kind of just like the 3 things that I see that seemed the most beneficial, but they don't have any real function to the build. They're just not, they're not key elements like a lot of people use flasks for. I did not see the need. So now, let's get into the passives. And right off the bat, I zoomed out so you could kind of take a brief look, but let's do the ascendancies. Now, just like everybody else, yeah, we went for the inexorable critical forced outcome. You really want those inevitable critical hits. It's just beneficial. Can't possibly not be. We went with the paths not taken. Now that's the less common choice, and one that I had mentioned previously when we were first discussing this character in my earlier video. It was a huge deal. The most dangerous thing you can do in a video game is to give a really avid theory crafter like 30% more choices. If you give them that many more choices, they're going to make something far more dangerous than the person who doesn't have choices. It's just the nature of it. So it was a no-brainer. Main reason I picked Oracle, and still one of the strongest features in Oracle as far as I'm concerned. Last up, because we're using so much ice, 20% increased immobilization buildup. And the moment of vulnerability, which we already discussed being so important for dealing damage to any sort of boss. It's just literally one of... It's not even used very much. It's like a ribbon feature in D&D. Ribbon features are usually considered to be the features you get at level 20. They are never necessary. They are always icing on top of the cake. That's a great way to put it. So, there we go. I'll zoom back out. And you'll see that while my skill tree is fairly simple, due to the Oracle, we do have some actually pretty interesting nodes here that you would not normally access or have access to when playing any other class. Some of the big ones here give me increased thorns damage, extra damage while shape-shifted. This one that I'm working towards here with some of my last levels is elemental damage and more cold damage, because it makes that much sense. Working our way out to the outside, more freeze threshold. You know, we were going there mainly for that freeze buildup. We really wanted that to work. We wanted our shape-shifted skills. I basically hit, the search bar up there in the top left, and on my last reroll I made sure, but I clicked shapeshift and I found every single useful shape-shifting ability that I could in here. Here is our node that gives us the unique scepter, non-unique scepter, while wielding a talisman. And then we went again, more shape-shifting nodes, and more shape-shifting nodes, and even more freeze build-up. You can pretty much notice a theme here. Even our jewel sockets are not insane. I never did invest in any of the timeless jewels like the lost diamonds and all that stuff. It's just a pretty normal jewel. We worked all the way over here because up here we did find a very nice set of nodes with +1 to freeze skills and the 55% increased freeze build-up. I mean, that's a really, really, really nice buff. But as you can see, outside of the few sets of Oracle nodes, everything I've done is, I would say, very self-explanatory. There's a mixture, a ratio of about 75% offensive nodes and about 25% defensive nodes. And that pretty much covers it. So that should give you kind of an idea of why we picked what we did, what the goal is going forward, what kind of gear you would need, and just an overall general, I guess, consensus of the character. So, now that we have covered all of the details of my Oracle Wolf and how they became capable of doing the endgame, let's discuss the endgame itself. In my previous video, I described my Oracle Wolf's experience in Ray class, all the way up to, I believe, it was tier 12 maps previously. So, let's finish off his tale with how we proceeded into the latter parts of the endgame. In tier 12 maps, I was finding myself getting through them fairly often, at least, with multiple tries, because my damage was actually alright, but not great on them. Well, my damage on the maps themselves was great, but the bosses were not easy at all, and certain rares were not easy. I couldn't juice them at all, and even if I did, I was dying more often than I was winning, despite clearing the maps through multiple attempts, and I wasn't really getting any stronger. So, since my offense was basically okay, I decided to invest in my defenses. And I started devoting my currency and checking the markets often to devote what I could to the issue that was at hand. I honestly didn't notice too much of a difference though until I found the body armor that I mentioned now previously and got that equipped. I must have been close to the damage threshold needed to survive though, because as soon as I equipped that, I found myself completing all the way up to tier 14s consistently and with little issue. Those 500 points in total in defenses made a huge difference between armor and energy shield. So at this point, I then, now that I was actually surviving okay, began to try and find a new weapon. And that was actually a little bit harder. You see, it wasn't harder to find a better weapon. It was harder to find a better weapon that I could afford. I began buying up any talismans I could find with 3 major statistical categories. I wanted at least a +7 to melee skills, wanted over 100% increased elemental damage, and I wanted a pretty substantial increase to attack speed. think in the end I purchased a total of 5 of them that were all roughly identical in price and stats. I think the 5 cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 divines, and then I devoted a few more divines worth of materials like perfect exalts and desecration modifiers and that kind of thing to build them all to the best of my ability. And I finally got one correct for my build. It became the weapon that I showcased to you earlier. The others I turned around, put immediately back on the market, flipped and sold for about 30 div. So after the investment that I put into them, I was still able to turn a small profit on top of gifting myself a new primary weapon. All thanks to slowly learning how to craft, being willing to experiment, and in some instances buying more than what was necessary to get the turnaround that I was looking for. So, once I had my new weapon, I had my defenses set, I had all my elemental resistances done, the whole 9, I decided to go ahead and try a tier 15 before I was going to devote another like 200 to 500 divines, because that was where the character was at. If I wanted another upgrade, it was going to be not something small that I could make into something expensive. It was just going to be expensive. So, I tried a base level tier 15, got through it no issues. I did another tier 15 base map, same thing. And I knew this character was then ready to establish themselves as being a complete build. And while I'd been in the mapping process and bouncing all over the damn Infinite Atlas, I did early on actually discover the citadels. And once I did, I just basically vacated the whole area around them and saved them to the point that I was at now, to the point where I was ready to fight the Arbiter of Ash. Once I finally was at this point, I searched back in the map, I found all 3 citadels that I had left sitting. I began working my way towards the assault. And after not very terribly long, I was ready for I think it was about 2 hours. I was ready to take on the Arbiter of Ash. So now was the time. I gathered my nerve and attacked the burning monolith. And the fight that I found didn't disappoint me. The Arbiter was super strong and insanely durable as I remember, especially in comparison to the normal bosses found in the game. And I honestly think, while I was trying to remember his mechanics from a few months ago, and also try and figure out the spacing issues that werewolves in their shape-shifted form present, I think I died like 12 to 15 times. But it wasn't due to being necessarily super difficult. In fact, I literally think I died at least 4 times because just a little too much of the woven form's body was sticking outside of one of those fucking fiery death explosions that one-shot you that he casts in rapid order while blipping around the map. But after all of that, after figuring out exactly how much of my body needed to be in those circles, literally one final victorious howl at the moon, and my Oracle Wolf had slaughtered him. He had beaten the Arbiter of Ash and could clear all but the literal absolute hardest of the endgame content. And this is good enough for me to call him complete without devoting an obscenely amount of resources into him to get any stronger than he already is. So, once again, I knew it was time for a new episode and to get ready for the final part of our adventures through Ray class with another character. That just about does it for today's latest episode. I am Gottomas, your forever DM, wanting to wish you good luck with your own theory crafting, grinding, and character development. Thank you as always for joining me on my newest adventure, and if you like the content, as always, please like and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second to do, and it really does do wonders for the algorithm to get my videos out there to a broader audience. Please join me next time for another new episode of ExiledGottomas, where I will be bringing you the details and endgame experiences of my next character. If you have a preference for which of my characters you would like to see me finish next, please feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget, my new guild, the Wind Talkers, is currently in the process of recruiting for members and leadership roles. So please, if you are interested, don't hesitate to send me a message and let me know. I hope you all will once again join me next time, and thank you for joining me once again today. Have a great day, guys, and hopefully I will see you soon as we both continue to progress in our adventures through Rayclast.